Now I would like to introduce our speaker, Margo Cowan. She has been involved since 2011, I believe, with an organization called Keep Tucson Together. Their mission is to provide proper representation for immigrants to make sure they get a fair trial. All those organizations certainly are under grave concern at this point. So, Margo, please come forward. The floor is yours.
I see a lot of friends here, a lot of friends that I have never had the pleasure of meeting, but it's a great honor to be here with you this afternoon. And I just want to share a little bit of information about the moment. And then I want to tell you about the Justice for All campaign. We came within 10,000 signatures last go around of being on the ballot. And at the time I was working full time as a public defender. So I retired, and watch out. We're going to get on the ballot this time, but we need everybody's help. We need everybody's help. I just want to give you an idea of this moment for people without documents in our community, because the clinic was in effect in Trump 1, and all of us were involved in what was going on in the community then. But this time it's much, much different. And we see the comments that he makes about all sorts of other areas and how rough and tough and brusque and all of that, cutting all the budgets and laying off all the employees and all those kinds of things. What's happening in community is horrific. Most of the people that we see in our clinic are folks with blended families. In other words, mom might be undocumented, dad's a U.S. citizen, or dad's undocumented, mom's a lawful permanent resident, but is eligible to be a citizen, but never had anybody that could help her. All the stuff we do at the clinic is free. I believe very strongly that one doesn't sell knowledge, but one shares knowledge. And so, everybody that wants to be a citizen, but they don't have the money to pay a lawyer. I'm very proud of our citizenship team has produced more than 4,000 new U.S. citizens. When the moment is horrific. There are some families, there are asylum seekers primarily, that come and both parents and all the kids are without status. And we've seen people now in the clinic that are not just from Mexico or say Guatemala sometimes, they're from all over, everywhere. They need people to produce their asylums. And so we have a fellow that used to be a judge in Mexico that I did his asylum. And he now produces all of the applications. And then we have a couple of retired college professors that do all the country conditions and all of that. Just last week, without a lawyer with them, 2 families won their asylums. Wow. And we're really proud of that because we're very much committed to demystifying the law. It shouldn't be like a secret. The community should understand, not just superficially what their rights are, but with some depth what their rights are. And we always say, and to all the folks that come through, Keep Tucson Together, you have to do me one big favor. You have to share what you learned here with the neighbors, with the people you go to church, with all the fellows you work with. When you go to PTA meetings, the other people, you got to share this knowledge. You got to share it because knowledge is power. And you are a bit less afraid when you know the real deal. So I'm very proud of the model that is KTT. Most of the folks that work at KTT, how many Border Patrol agents are in this room? You promise? Most of the people that work at KTT are without documents. And I'm really proud of that because it is truthfully community serving community. And my job is just to share the knowledge and answer the questions and build up that kind of capacity in community so that you don't have to come to the office for an appointment. You can talk to somebody who knows that works there. And if that person can't answer the question, they know somebody that can. So that's the model that we've used for many years. And it is very effective in community. Sometimes employers call, and they said, worked for me for a long time, But I'm afraid that they're going to do what's called an I-9 audit. They're going to come in and want to see my books and see, does this person have proof of U.S. citizenship or lawful permanent residence or whatever. But you always have to think that when there's a presentation, and this is the great spirit that I love about working in this community, is when there's a presentation and there's not a remedy that like jumps out to you and says, oh, I know what you can do, X, Y, and Z. Okay. In this situation, there aren't any traditional X, Y's, and Z's. So we created a subcontract. And you don't need to have any documents to enter into subcontract. Anybody can enter into a subcontract. So typically you think of subcontracts limited to like construction workers and people like that, because one of the requirements, the only requirement of a true subcontract, is that the person that's the worker has to bring some tools, their own tools. Okay, so what tools do you think the ladies that clean the fancy hotels bring with them? They bring solid tins. And that's their tool. And so there's always a salida. There's always a way. If we just look at the presentation, but we don't look at it in a traditional sense, we look at the words. Okay, what do you take to your job? And we make it work. And that's the spirit. That's the spirit of community. That's how people stay and contribute and make our communities better places. Let me tell you a little bit about a couple of things. One of our right-hand fellas, Raimundo Montes, back in the corner, put these together. And they're packets that you might take a look at. They're tailored for folks that don't have documents. But you all might know people like that, or they might work for friends of yours or something. So these are really important, and we got a box of them, and I urge you to take them. The first one is Know Your Rights, which is important, and a couple of other sort of educational pieces. In here that's really important is a limited power of attorney. And so what that is, if somebody, for example, has U.S. citizen kids, and they and their spouse are undocumented, and whether you're a relative or not, maybe they're just somebody that's been your best bud forever, this gives them and you power to take care of the kids if mom and dad and or are taken. So that's in here. There's also a general power of attorney in here. And they're just things that give people a sense of security. And we do these. You all can do them. They're not rocket science, and all the pieces of the puzzles are here. When people need to know that they can make those kinds of arrangements too. One thing about being without status is that unfortunately, all of the administrations and our government has done very successfully is make people think they don't have any rights. You know, that their job is to do the dirty work and hide out and take whatever they're given and be thankful, and that's it. That's not true. Everybody in the United States, when you're in the United States, we all have the same rights. And so these documents are prepared for whomever. This is another really handy card. And this was, and these are if people who are without documents, or you have friends that folks work for them or whatever, you should look at these and pass them on. This is a Know Your Rights card. It was produced by a group of like nationwide lawyers like ACLU and others that put this together so people can carry this in their wallet. So if someone's wondering, do they have to open the door? No, no abre la puerta. Do they have to answer questions? No, no conteste preguntas. Do they have to sign something? No, no firma nada. People assume that because they had no status, they have no rights. And that's not true. Once you're in the United States, we all have the same rights. So we have these packages, and maybe you personally don't know of somebody that could benefit, but maybe you know somebody that does, and take however many you want, or just pass it around. So that's today. Okay, this is a sign that we're passing out to everybody and asking them to post your houses, your stores, your whatever. And the reason is during Trump 1, we passed out about 8,000 in Pima County. Half of those were to undocumented families, and the other half were to folks like us. So it's not like the Border Patrol sees one and says, oh, I'm gonna go there. I can get those guys right there. And here's the thing about immigration law. It's an administrative proceeding. And we're made to think that it's a criminal proceeding. It's not. It's an administrative proceeding. So it's, okay, your social security check didn't come this month. So there are things that you do. That's an administrative proceeding. Or they reduced the amount of the check and didn't send a letter and say, we're going to reduce your check by X. How do you fuss about that? You file an administrative notice. You say, I want to tell an administrative judge that this isn't fair. Okay. I should have had notice or something else. Okay. That's what immigration is. It's administrative. And it's treated like it's super criminal. Now, I'm not talking about how did you enter the country. Very hard to prove that somebody entered without inspection unless they say they entered without inspection. Very hard. So the number of cases that are actually criminal are really few. The thousands and thousands of people have administrative issues. I want to tell you a little story about some women that came from Venezuela, and they went to, and then their kids, and they went to Chicago, and I don't know why, but they went to Chicago. Then they were there for a little bit, and they connected with family and friends around the country, and so they all went to where their connections were. And they all, this is before temporary protected status was eliminated, which was just happening a few days ago by this president, the current president. Temporary protected status means our government acknowledges that the sending country is in turmoil and people have legitimate reasons to flee. And so although we're not saying you're going to be a lawful permanent resident immediately, we're going to protect you. So it's temporary protected status. So this group of women all had temporary protected status. And there's one woman that was able to communicate with her husband, who ended up in Tucson, decided to come to Tucson. So they all have to check in with ICE periodically. So she went to ICE in Chicago, and she said, I'm going to Tucson, and here's my address. Well, ICE didn't tell the immigration court that she had come and checked in, like she always checked in. So she was ordered deported in absentia. And you might have read that maybe about a week ago, she went to the grocery store with 2 of her 4 children in the car. She was stopped by a city policeman, a Tucson police officer. And the first thing that he said to her was, let me see your documents. Not, you're going too fast, you're going too slow, let me see your license, your taillights out. Nothing that has to do with his scope. Let me see your documents. She didn't have any documents. She was going to the grocery store. And he immediately called the Border Patrol. They were there really within minutes. And she was stacked about 9:30 at night. She was in Villahermosa the next morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so she didn't get processed with any kind of due process, but this is not a public plane that she was taken on. This is a military plane. There's no other explanation. She can't call up, like the government can't call up American Airlines and say, will you take this lady to Villahermosa? So that's happening in our town. That's why, and I share that story, and her husband and the other 2 children were at home, waiting for him to come home from the grocery store. So we connected them with some services in Mexico, but they aren't Mexican citizens, they're Venezuelans. And so in Mexico, they are undocumented. And she said she was stranded down there by herself, knowing nobody in Villahermosa. And a Catholic priest who had worked in Mexico City talked to the Catholic priest in Villahermosa and made arrangements for the mom and the 2 kids to be safe until the dad and the other 2 kids could get down there. The problem is that the United States is pressuring Mexico not only to put, I think, it's either 10 or 15,000 soldiers on the border, Mexican soldiers on the border, to interdict people before they cross, but also to deport all these people that are in Mexico from sending countries that are not Mexicans. Now, that's really horrific, because if you can't stay in your country of origin, then you have to leave. And this family had a very strong asylum application. We would have won her asylum case. Very strong case. So if you have to leave, you can't. How do you cross Mexico? You can't cross. And then how do you get to the United States? And at this moment, how are you able to even be in a position to go through an immigration process and filing your applications? So that's the real deal in the streets. And that's very different. I've been doing this for 200 years, way too long. And I've never seen this kind of position where I could not prepare an asylum application for someone and file it. And then immediately it would trigger an administrative process of, okay, you can talk to the judge, you can tell her what's happening and blah, 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 blah. If it's denied, you can appeal. A process, like a respectful process that you rely on, and you tell people, here's what we can do in terms of your status. Gravity of this moment and the suffering that this community is experiencing. So now I want to tell you about the campaign, because many of you signed the petition last go-around, and many of you circulated the petition last go-around, Justice for All, Justicia para Todos. And the idea is to create a public defender office that would represent non-citizens who are put in removal proceedings and are too poor to hire a lawyer. Just like when I was a public defender, people who were charged with serious felonies and didn't have enough money to hire a lawyer were appointed a public defender. Same thing. So that's what this is. And we're once again circulating petitions. Now, last time around, we got 85,000 signatures, and we needed 95,000. This year, my goal is 125,000. We have to turn those in by July 1st of 26. So I brought a whole box of these. Now, they have 2 petitions on each cool. And I'm asking people to consider taking a clipboard and getting 30 people who are registered to vote in Pima County to sign this. Because it's the only way that this is going to happen this time around, is for us to reach out to everybody who understands the horror of the moment and is willing to put a little bit of effort into standing with families. Even though you haven't met them, you can imagine who they are. So we have a list back there. We have street yard signs. Yellow signs are really important because they're all over, predominantly Tucson, but I'm sure there are some around here, that are homes of undocumented families. And so now we need to put them on our homes so it doesn't stand out that, oh, this is an undocumented family that lives here. They just become common and seen all over the place. So to the extent that folks would take those and put them up, and if you live in a complex where you can put up posters and things, maybe just stick it in the window. Or maybe put it in your living room. But some way so that people that you have contact with and ask you, what do you mean about that? They're never going to come and get you. Let me tell you what happens to people without papers. Because it's really important that we share this knowledge. It can't be a secret. What happened to that mom, it can't be a secret. We had these four guys that have been our clients for a long time. A grandfather, a father, and 2 sons. They were going somewhere last weekend. I don't know where they were going. They were stopped again by a city policeman. They were handcuffed. They were held for an hour until they could identify that they were just guys. And they were, I think, grandpa and father are lawful permanent residents. I think the boys were U.S. citizens. And they took the cuffs off, and they had cuts on each of their eyes. Each of theirs. So we're not talking about, I'm sorry, madam, I'm going to have to cuff you. It won't occur. And we're going to talk for just a little bit. I have to check something. No, there's out and out torture of people to scare them to death. And none of these fellows had ever been stopped for anything. And not only were they stopped, in my view, they were tortured because they had no reason to put cuts, and they certainly had no reason to put them to the extreme that they would cut their. And look where they are. Look where they are. It's not like it's on a toe. It's right on top of a serious artery. So unfortunately, that's what's happening in our community. And I want to answer any questions that you have, but I want you to think about this and talk to your people that you know that are registered. And all of us in this room are community activists. You wouldn't be here on Saturday afternoon if you didn't care about your community. And so please, there's only 30 people, just the registered voters. We need to get, my goal is 125,000. We need to be on the ballot in Pima County. I know it will pass. That I know. It's just a question of getting it on the ballot. So what all are your thoughts? What are what?
Limitation. You have to make sure the people that are applying to the petition are Arizona voters.
Pima County. Yep.
I was with Sheriff Dufaway yesterday down in Santa Cruz. He's pushing hard back against Operation Stone's harder. And however, his problem is ISIS was coming and hired in deputy, and they're not making treatment like about HRT. So we can help our.
Could you tell about the judges that have been fired that were for asylum judges? And that happened recently, hasn't it?
Yes, it did. That's so weird way. Because part of what we do as lawyers in immigration court is we try and drag it out as long as possible. We want to win, but we don't want to take a chance that we're not going to win. So the first level, we file all sorts of motions. We have all sorts of hearings. If it's denied, then we take it up on appeal. And if it's denied there, we take it up on the next level of appeal. We could tie him up for 5 or 6 years, which is good because this guy will be gone in theory. But yeah, it's a complete flip.
I wanted to know if the Tucson police are told to do racial profiling for stopping people like you mentioned, or what's the deal there, or the county either?
That's a great question. And both the chief of police and the sheriff said that Border Patrol and Tucson police would not collaborate, not Border Patrol. Pima County Sheriff and Tucson police would not collaborate with Border Patrol. And that's not what we're seeing in the street. I've talked to a couple of people on the Board of Supervisors about it. I've talked to the mayor and one city councilwoman about it. We just have to get our documentation out there. And the question was, how do we put pressure on the police department? That's a really good question because in general, they're going to tell you they don't do that.
Yeah.
Everybody can say, "Now you've heard it from me," and I certainly would not stand up here and lie to you. That's not true, and maybe you all know people, too, that have had these kinds of experiences, and that as a taxpayer, you tell me one thing and you do something else.
Do you know if our HOAs and tell us we can't put those big yellow signs up?
I think it goes with each different one, or where you can put it. If you can't put it on the window in the living room facing out, you can put it in the living room facing in. And everybody that comes to see you will say, "Wow, why do you have that up?" And then that's a great learning experience.
Could you explain to us exactly how Justice for All is going to correct the situation?
Yes, I can. Good question. Thank you. Justice for All will create the right to a public defender to be appointed for everyone who meets the financial guideline and is not financially in a position to hire no lawyer. Like when I was a public defender and I did felonies, and so there's a scale, and perhaps a person might not be at the end of the scale, but maybe they're at 35% of the scale or 56%. So then it's prorated.
Oh, okay.
And if they don't meet that criteria, and if they don't meet the criteria, then at least in theory, they would have enough money to hire counsel. Very few people who are here without documents are going to be able to hire. I would guess 99% of the folks will be eligible for appointed counsel. I just want to say that we would be the first border county to do this in the country.
On the question, is there anything we can do
as citizens, if we see something happening like what happened with the Venezuelan woman, if she doesn't know her rights, if I'm talking to her or anything, then someone needs help, can we step in? Yes, you can. Remember, this is an administrative proceeding. Yes, you can. And if it's like actually a confrontation kind of thing, and you can just see that it's completely inappropriate, take a picture and get it to an elected official or to me, to someone to tell the story.
One thing to add to that is, if you see it, record it, picture it. If you see federal agents at an apartment complex, there have been many attorneys out in the community with megaphones, pretty much screaming whatever's in the back of the cars and the fodder. That you can pretty much do. You can be in the public sidewalk. You're not interrupting that because you're in public property, so you cannot be helping that. So there's been a lot of activism going on. Most important one here is, if you see a stop and you see a border patrol, if you see the sheriff or the police and you see a border patrol agent one day, stop, take pictures, record it, send it to us, send it to your representative. That way we can have it be like, hey, you said you're not doing it. Here's the evidence that you are.
That's Raimundo from our office. Oh, really proud of that little brother. Do you, for the folks that have HOA issues, do you have bumper stickers for Justice for All? No, but that's a good idea. We certainly could get some. We'll get some and send them down. How's that?
No.
But you still can put that in the living room. And the people that come to visit will say, what's that about? Is somebody after you or whatever? And then that opens the door to say whatever.
I have a dear friend who's a caregiver, and she's a naturalized citizen, but she has misplaced her papers. Where would she get a copy? How could she redocument her naturalization?
She can just come to our office and
I'll send her there.
Thank you. 730 South Osborne. Good. Anybody, 730 South Osborne. 8:30 until more or less 4 o'clock. And we have a clinic at Pueblo High School every Thursday night. Starts at 5:30, and we don't leave until everybody's gone. And you don't have to have an appointment. People can come and just ask all sorts of questions. The undocumented person, mostly the community, comes. But that doesn't always happen. A lot of times, contractors or employers or somebody comes and says that, it's funny, they always start off, I have a hypothetical. So, okay, that's cool. We don't hypotheticals. No hay problemas. That's okay. That's high. All we're about is sharing that knowledge. But folks can't come. I know it's a trip for you, but we're in the Pueblo cafeteria every Thursday from 5:30 to whenever. The other thing there, I want to say thank you to some Samaritans that are here, because I feel like our clinic is a target. I feel like at any time Border Patrol or ICE are going to try and bust the in or something. There's no basis for them to have a warrant. But the Green Valley SAMs and the Tucson SAMs have created little teams, and they come and sit in our office every day, all day long. And give them a round of applause. Yeah. It's been killer. And the gang, the people that work there and the clients that come, it's hard for us at times to talk about racism. It's really hard to figure out to how to talk about it. But the gang in the office is like all these old white people care about us. And in a way, that's really sad. But in another way, it's really killer, because they feel so, wow. These people come and they sit with us. And I got to tell you a funny story, and then I'll catch whoever's in the corner. I was coming and there were two Sams sitting on the front porch. And because it really is delightful. Some Sams sit right by the door and they have the door locked. It has like a cast iron door kind of thing. And if somebody comes and they open it and they let them come, then they lock it again, right? And everybody has their idea of security. But these two women were sitting on the porch in chairs, and they had their hands across their chest, and they had really grumpy faces on. And I said, hey, you guys, what are you doing? We're practicing on being mean looking. And I hope they come when we're here. Now, to the folks that work in the clinic, that's like $1 million. Look at those old ladies sitting out there hoping they come when they're there. And it's just because our communities don't have opportunities to come together. They just don't. And so when they do, it's beautiful. I'm encouraging all of you to come and sit for an hour or two.
Margo, do you have other volunteer opportunities that people in Green Valley could do by coming up to Tucson?
Sure. We do tons of asylums. We have a couple of retired college professors that do research. We always, if you in your other life did anything scholarly or with research or any of that, you really don't have to know a ton of stuff to figure out what's going on and be able to just get on the computer and see what you can find. So there's that kind of stuff. We have a naturalization clinic. People that worked in that clinic are now at the office because I think it's safer for them. But there's all sorts of naturalization applications that need to be prepared, asylum applications. So there's a ton of stuff. And we are mostly engaged in doing the stuff that has to get filed and that kind of thing, or filed with the court. Which that means is that we have piles of files that need to be archived and organized and all that. And so we have what I would say are terrible jobs, and then we have interesting jobs. I just wanted to say that the Green Valley Samaritans that are working in your office are so proud to be there. And many of us are winter visitors. And as the winter begins to end and people are going home, we're going to run out of some of our volunteers that come and sit at your office at the door and it'll be whatever. If there's anyone here that is year-round, I'm really begging for people that will be able to come in April, May, June, until we all come back in the fall and can start again.
I'm one of the Green Valley Samaritans that has done this. It's not frightening. Margo has a list of what we should do, and it's laid out very nicely. The staff are very nice. They offer us food. And if there's a job we can do, they'll ask us to do it. But please consider it's not frightening at all.
It really makes it makes a huge impression on the community. They're just like, wow, these people care about us.
What do folks do that come through your office that need medical assistance?
It's a little bit more difficult. We used to have this sort of underground organization called the Book Club, and it was all nurses and doctors. And they were still in practice at all the hospitals in Tucson. And so we would call somebody from the book club, and they would make arrangements for whatever was necessary. But now almost all of them have retired. Sometimes I call on them to try and call on somebody, but that's more dangerous. Or spigots. St. Mary's is good. St. Mary's doesn't call Border Patrol. University does. TMC does. Yes, will you come visit us? Everybody, please take a petition, take a clipboard. We really appreciate it.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Margo. That was wonderful for the sound. That's so sad that we're at a point where you have to be pretending. By little women, where are we? Where are we going? If you were at the meeting a couple of weeks ago, I ended the program by reciting a German poem, and I'd like to do it again. First, they came after the socialists. I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't speak up. And then they came after the Jews, and I'm not Jewish. Again, I didn't speak up. And then they came after the labor unions. I wasn't a tradesman, so I didn't speak up. And then they came after me, and there was no one left to speak up. Please speak up wherever you can.
Thank you all for coming.